Hey everyone, welcome back to AI Insights. I'm your favorite host for today, Fleur Prince, together with my co-host Grania.
Yes, very good to be back.
So yeah, this week the AI story isn't just about like singular breakthrough or like a generic product update. It's a story of profound friction. We're talking about like where massive corporate ambition, looming regulatory deadlines, and physical planetary constraints and real world system failures have collided at once. Like it's poof.
Exactly. And then for months, AI labs have been playing very complex, double games. I mean, we're warned about the catastrophic risks of their technology while we race to monetize it. And just like there's so many different updates, like OpenAI going public, and the actions of these companies have transformative impacts on kind of the generation of the technology and how it develops. And kind of this week, Anthropic has quietly shipped a cyber model that they deem too dangerous to realize, while Google's AI has been caught fabricating defamatory lies. And meanwhile, Apple has blocked Europeans from its new ecosystem entirely. So we are living in an era of very chaotic live deployment.
Yeah, but also we're talking about the era like of theoretical risk is like officially over, and now we're going towards live deployment. It's been
Yeah.
one crazy week. So, the stories that we're going to be covering is, yeah, we talked about earlier about Anthropic's Fable 5's least version of Mythos, which is being released,
Mhm.
the Splinternet of AI, the brutal force of scaling up, so XAI's Gigafactory of computes, and also the next investment wave, where infrastructure are taking over apps.
Mhm.
So let's dive into the first point. So I was talking about it earlier. So Anthropic Fable 5 is leased version of Mythos model, which is released to the users with a premium tag of like $10 per million input tokens and $50 per million output tokens. But why this matters, so also why we're talking about this to you guys, is because AI companies are now walking in a tightrope. Anthropic entire brand is equity on safety. But with the looming IPO and a near $1 trillion valuation to the event, they have to show aggressive enterprise revenue. But their solution, release the monster model anyways, but slap like an algorithmic muzzle on it, which was very interesting because first they were like warning every government, like, we made this model, we're not going to release it. And now they're like, actually, you know what? We're going to release it to the world. And that's actually how a San Francisco problem has now become a Washington problem, because Washington has actually decreed Anthropic, like, you cannot allow anyone who's not American to even touch this model because, yeah, they don't
Yeah.
want. Yeah, I was reading about it earlier because I was preparing this doc, I was like, oh, this is actually okay. They were like warning us, we're not going to release Midos. Now we are releasing Midos. We're just putting like a child version out there, but now
Yeah.
Washington basically said, "Yeah, we would like you guys actually to make sure that no one outside of the US or who's not an American citizen cannot touch this,
Yeah.
because it's going, very wrong."
Exactly, and it's a massive corporate liability shift. They're charging an absolute premium for a tamed model, but the underlying capacity and the architecture is out of the bag now. And another thing is that, we've kind of examined on the podcast before jailbreaking and red teaming and all these concepts about how you can like take, a foolproofed AI model and you can break it and you can use it to do kind of dangerous things or unethical things. So, I mean, it remains to be seen because this model is so new what the capacity to jailbreak it would be. So,
Yeah,
definitely food for
also,
thought.
like, top tier I mean, also here, if top tier guardrails are, like, kept behind heavy enterprise paywalls, while lighter versions here with, yeah, kind of filter it down, we're introducing also, like, a societal risk for the sake of profit margins, which goes
Yeah,
every against Anthropic was originally founded for. I mean, that's why their
yeah.
founders left OpenAI.
And Anthropic also very stays quite close to their values. For example, we even discussed on the podcast their recent perspective on deals with the US military and how they did not seek to deploy their technologies for the purposes of the US military. So we can see that Anthropic, kind of does have rigorous guardrails around what they want their technology to do. But the question
Mhm.
remains what the technology can actually do if it is released, and not the intention of Anthropic, but rather, like, what the model is actually capable of, and if it can be red teamed into doing something that Anthropic didn't originally envision. So Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how this will go. Also, when you look at indeed when we talked about Anthropic was staying close to their values, but also now becoming they have to appease to their IPO investors.
Yeah.
What will you do? Will you remain with your values, or will you make your investors happy?
Yeah, that's true. And another aspect as well is I think Anthropic is nearly playing it safe in a way because I mean, we're starting to see more now more than ever kind of regulations. Italy is now the officially the first country to fully implement the EU AI Act. So now Italy has, completely taken the so if Anthropic were to kind of, broadcast these tools in Italy, they could receive massive fines and, large chunks of their annual revenue could go towards EU AI Act fines. So really, I think kind of their reluctance to deploy does show a bit of, intelligence insofar as they're avoiding large consequences for themselves.
Oh, true. Actually, it's a good thing that you brought this up because it actually goes right into our next story. So we're talking also about the Splinternet of AI, so Apple's
Yeah.
EU AI wall. So Apple has actually announced that its flagship Siri AI features will not be available initially in the European Union across iOS, iPadOS, and watchOS, which was kind of it broke my heart a little bit. I mean, because
Yeah.
this is the first time like a major tech platform is initially fragmenting its core consumer user experience across like strict geopolitical lines. I
Yeah.
mean, the regulatory friction here tied to the incoming EU AI Act we were talking about, the transparency rules, is proving too complex for a synchronous global rollout.
Yeah, completely. I mean, it's really interesting. So I remember back when the AI generated images were first coming out, we kind of discussed that
Mhm.
like, the difference in the technology availability. So, my mom would send me a link because she would be over in America using, like, whatever model there was at the time, Nano Banana, I think, but I couldn't activate it. When I tried to click it, it said not available in your region. So, there's always been kind of like a diffused model. So, we get things later than, America would get them. However, now we're seeing that companies are announcing that, an aspect of kind of AI innovation would only be available in America. And you're right, like it's a bit deeper because it ties into user experience and fragmenting the user experience. So we could see, American phones having completely different UI to Irish phones, which is really with Irish or European phones. And it's also really interesting because like there's the question of where the phone is purchased, but there's also the question of which region you set up your phone in. For example, my phone I chose to set it up in America and I selected the region of America. However, if I'd selected the region of Ireland, even though I bought the phone in America, it's kind of just like considering the way in which this will kind of affect more global situations and where the lines will be drawn.
Oh, exactly, but this has already been a problem for years because I remember when my parents were living in Dubai.
Yeah.
Actually, and they purchased their phones there, they could not use things like WhatsApp or FaceTime.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. And another thing is Siri AI is really integrated at the kernel level across native apps, and it acts autonomously on the user's behalf. It also like Siri is so deeply integrated to where, if you say something, if you say the word Siri, your phone can activate or your phone can activate accidentally. And that really goes against the EUAI Act and the high risk transparency rules, which require clear disclosure, data logging, and human in the loop audit trails. And a lot of those are taking effect August 2026. So coming up to that, we should have like a special maybe even on the EUAI Act, but it'll be really interesting to see how the continued kind of implementation of this act affects, yeah, just the broader kind of landscape around innovation and user
Mhm.
experience.
No, agreed. What I also would definitely see also, like, here talking about, like, from a community consultant's perspective,
Yeah.
it actually creates an immediate two-tiered system for AI literacy. I mean, if young developers and professionals in Europe are locked out of the foundation ecosystem or the foundational ecosystem updates, it puts them like at a stark global disadvantage. And I mean, it's already hard to foster a community of digital leaders if our toolkits are like artificially restricted compared to our peers in the US or China or Australia or Africa, you name it. Yeah, that would mean that a lot of talent is probably going to move somewhere else because they're like, if I cannot get access to it, why would I stay here?
Completely. Another thing is I think Europe really deeply needs a sandbox. So a sandbox where, kind of from a government level, innovation is enshrined and kind of developers have a place to play around with high risk AI systems without fear of like kind of regulatory oversight. They did that in Texas, actually, ironically, when they imposed Triga, which is the EU AI Act's which is kind of like an American version of the EU AI Act specifically catered around Texas. And as an aspect of the act, they included the imposition of a sandbox where kind of developers and coders could go around the compliance aspects of those technologies. And even for Microsoft, when they were developing like kind of agentic capacities, agentic AI and kind of experimenting, they also were able to, engage with on an EU level because of certain exemptions within the EU AI Act that exempt research based high risk AI implementation and etc. So I think what needs to happen is kind of an extension of those conditions, an extension of exceptions for research to continue. But then again, I guess this isn't research, this is a commercial output. So, it remains to be seen, remains to be seen. So, and another thing I would just quickly mention is that Apple's European headquarters is based in Ireland. We have not implemented the EU AI Act anywhere near the same extent as other countries in the European Union. So, the way in which that Apple will be kind of regulated, it all remains to be seen.
It brings us into our next story,
Yeah.
where brute force scaling is actually happening for XAI's Gigafactory of compute.
Mhm.
We already saw that this week, SpaceX is officially going with their IPO towards the trading market.
Mhm.
But now we're actually talking about Elon Musk's other company, which is called XAI,
Yeah.
which is planning to build a massive gigafactory of compute designed to dwarf Meta's massive GPU clusters. So, yeah, while companies like Google and Anthropic are focusing heavily on like the safety guardrails, liability frameworks, and also like careful deployment, XAI is actually befitting heavily on raw brute force. So their goal is like sheer unadulterated scale.
Wow. And another thing is this is kind of indicative of his general strategy in markets. XAI's Grok has already pushed a unique style that explicitly handles subjects without the strict filters of its competitors. So he takes a kind of unique, approach to regulation.
There's been so much in the news what you can do with Grok. It's
Yeah,
insane.
exactly. And then also the energy and compute demands for these proposed superclusters are astronomical. So the sheer capital required to build a quote unquote gigafactory of compute means that the foundational AI race is fully closed off to anyone but the wealthiest tech giants. It's essentially an arms race that regulates itself not through policy but extreme and financial barriers to entry. Another thing I kind of wonder is, we're very much aware of kind of the broader price of these factories, the damage that they do to the ecosystem, and then also of the regulatory aspects. So, for example, Europe would have heavier regulations on these sorts of establishments. So, I wonder where he would base this factory. I mean, definitely not San Francisco, I'm sure, given that I don't think the resources are there to, kind of provide this to build what he's seeking to do. So, yeah.
I mean, either you probably do what he did with with his other projects. Either it's gonna be like in the Middle East, or it's probably gonna be a factory somewhere in the US.
Yeah.
But it depends on where he wants to build it, because indeed, for it's all you're talking here about cooling systems, so you need water. There needs to be water there that you can cool,
Yeah,
that you can also reuse every time, because otherwise you're just gonna pay a heavy water bill.
completely.
So that's something that they're probably going to be looking into. But also, the approach that they're taking here feels like a throwback also to the early 2010s move fast and break things era. Was
Yeah,
as That is the most amazing thing that I could have ever seen on the news. But like here, while other labs are like talking about alignment and careful rollout, XAI is like building the biggest engine possible to see how fast the car can
yeah,
go.
without
But it was a real
yeah,
world impact here, because the unconstrained scaling on energy grids and local communities is most likely gonna become a problem for them.
completely.
But also for the communities around them, because we all need drinking water, so that would also need to be looked at as well. Like, are you going to be taking a lot of drinking water away, especially with the hot summer that's coming?
Mhm.
Or will you actually look at reusing water or looking somewhere else to get that?
Yeah, and I mean, another kind of aspect is that all of this is so new, right? So the decisions that are made now will really have reverberations. I mean, these companies are kind of they're operating in a vacuum, in like a unique space where technology has never been at this level before. So it'll be really interesting to see how things progress.
No, true. And actually, that also brings us to our next story, which is actually the next investment wave. Because we all know the World Economic Forum, like they're very good at predicting where we're going to go with the world and
Yeah.
also what we should be looking into. And they're actually talking about that AI infrastructure is going to take over the AI apps that have been popping up from left to right.
Oh yeah, AI apps are major.
Yeah, I mean, they just announced that in 2026, like technology pioneers and AI infrastructure startups are dominating. And
Mhm.
AI now accounts for, like, almost, like, 60% of global venture capital.
Whoa.
I didn't know that there was that much being invested already. I knew, like, deep tech a lot of people were getting into, but not per se, like, AI infrastructure startups.
Yeah.
But also, like, why this matters to the market is because,
Mhm.
it has moved from the past shallow wrapper apps, not rapper, but I mean, like, rapper, ChatGPT wrapper apps.
Yeah.
For anyone who's listening who's like, "Why would a wrapper app be so interesting?"
Yeah.
But the real money is now solving, like, the physical and operational bottlenecks of the agent economy, like grid capacity forecasting and also orchestrating GPU workloads.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think we're moving out of a SaaS era. So a software as a service, I think we're
I
moving
hate
out.
SaaS. I'm sorry, I don't like it.
Yeah. No, completely. I think we're moving out of that era. I think, some major players have been differentiated and that, that market is seeing less demand. I mean, it's even a meme now. And I think we're now kind of, I mean, even you can see it with Grok, right? And this XAI and this Gigafactor million when people whatever they're building, right? It relates to the infrastructure, it relates to enablement, it relates to these operational bottlenecks as opposed to we have this software solution that you should buy or we'll make your click this times fast like 2 seconds
Mhm.
faster with this I think we're moving away from that and I think we're moving into what is actually going to enable these changes to society to continue the way that they currently are. So yeah, I mean, some specific examples, startups like Emerald AI and Grid Care are actively unlocking hidden capacity on existing power grids to help get data centers online. And then new financial platforms are emerging solely to handle verified identity and payments for AI agents. That's major. I would love to do a deep dive on like just agentic commerce. I think it's fascinating. I think it's around the corner, definitely for the US, maybe a little bit less so in Europe which kind of moves at a slower scale, but definitely in the United States. But it's just like as our society changes, right? What frameworks will uphold that change? And I think that is what the market is looking towards now.
No, agreed. I mean, the shift towards like infrastructure is actually where the most exciting work in AI for good can happen. I mean, if we can innovate on how energy is distributed and also consumed by data centers, we
Yeah.
can solve a bottleneck for tech and a critical issue for a local power grid simultaneously. Because in the Netherlands, there's a good example that there's even now a commercial starting of like asking people to do the laundry when during daytime instead of during nighttime, so that the power grid
Yeah.
doesn't suddenly, well, everything will go dark.
Yeah.
But also what I wanted to say as well is just AI agents, like right now, most are being built like on the old infrastructure, so like legacy systems. But I'm definitely seeing it's changing on that part. But it's just a question, how do you get AI agents to work together without that
Mhm.
compromising per se legacy systems?
Completely.
I think that's a question that's gonna be answered this year.
Yeah, another kind of final complexity point I'm thinking along those lines is, in my current job, we see this huge kind of fear regarding vendor reliance. So basically, and this is still in the SaaS world, but it kind of relates to infrastructure. If we rely on one vendor, right, and we sell all of our to one vendor, and this vendor has all of our information, and we're trained in it, etc., it becomes extremely difficult to migrate to another app if you're a multinational corporation or major corporation, just because of the scale of effort it requires. Like, are you even able to transfer the data? How do you replicate the data? A lot of services will intentionally ensure that there's not an easy transfer in order to keep their clientele. But yeah, so I kind of wonder if we'll see something happen like this for infrastructure, where we're kind of going to see like vendor reluctance, like the major players will really dominate, and it's going to be impossible to move away from the major players. I think it's another kind of battlefield to like this societal shift that will be an extremely important flag point to kind of watch.
No, exactly. And the question is going to be, I think, like I said earlier, I think the question that's going to be answered also this year is: are we building an infrastructure that support human needs, or is it just an infrastructure that supports more AI?
Right.
But that would be definitely interesting. Anyways, we're
Yeah.
at the end of our talking points, and we hope everyone has been put up to date what has happened this week in AI. Because we talked about like the commercial imperatives overrule safety anxieties. So Anthropic's deployment of Fable 5 proves the commercial obligations, and IPO tracking will eventually force deep tech models out of the lab.
Hmm.
And that safety concerns are not going to withstand it unless their CEO says, "Yeah, sorry, we're not doing it."
Hmm.
But then they probably will get fired as they'll put someone
Yeah.
else in their place.
Hmm.
That's usually how those things go.
Exactly.
Oh, they did try it at OpenAI at the time, and then almost everyone left when Sam Altman got fired and then rehired. So
Yeah.
maybe we'll see something similar like that happen again.
Yeah, it's really interesting kind of the politics of it all and just how
Mhm.
fast everything changes. I mean, institutions and like kind of economic, developments have been marked by, kind of gradual development. Like, for example, a bank doesn't change very fast, like those sorts of things. But AI is so fast moving. And we've been tracking it all for the past few years.
Yeah, I mean, we've been covering Indeed for the past few years, and we talked about it so many times where it's just like a one big telenovela that's happening right now.
Literally, literally.
I mean, we are enjoying the gossip. I'm just saying.
Yeah, yeah,
But
completely.
also here we're talking about as well when we covered the geopolitics are fragmenting the consumer web. So Apple's EU holdout demonstrates that regulatory walls are now creating entirely separate tiers of consumer technology across the globe.
Hmm.
Interfaces are shifting to the background, so the traditional text box chatbot is fading out of ambient OS integration.
Hmm.
And flexible enterprise multi-cloud options are now scaling out. But also the physical bill has arrived. AI is no longer a borderless, weightless cloud project.
Hmm.
The environmental, the energy, and infrastructure bottlenecks are now directly dictating corporate investments and also
Completely.
policy bad.
Mhm.
And that's just like, anyways. So this was this week's telenovela of AI.
Exactly, exactly, and thank you guys as always for listening in, and let us know what topics you would wanna hear about in the future. I definitely think we should do an EU AI Act kind of deep dive coming up to the August 2026 deployment.
No, exactly. I think it's a great thing for us to plan that in. Also, what I want to say to everyone who's listening, if you want to stay up to date, but you don't always want to listen to our podcast, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter.
Yes.
So you can find it on our LinkedIn page.
Mhm.
And also, you can find us on LinkedIn and Instagram at Gen Z AI Insights. On LinkedIn, by the way, we're recalled now AI Insights Network if you're looking for us.
Yes.
So, yeah, we officially got our domain name, so that's really awesome. And closing line would definitely be for this episode be technology should serve humanity, not the other way around. And also stick to your guts, stick to your
Exactly.
policies.
Yeah, exactly.
Think that. So, anyways, bye.